So the camera takes longer than actually shooting the clip. Right, let's do this. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the vlog. I'm going to do something slightly different today, and as you've probably noticed, I'm not in the van. I'm actually in my man cave, which is, well, it's a cave for me. It's a glorified shed. Anyway, we're not here to talk about my man cave, we're here to talk about the cost of our van build, and in particular around how to budget for building your own van. So I fully appreciate that this is potentially a fairly contentious subject because everyone's budgets are going to be completely different when it comes to their own van build. You can have anything from a modest, fairly basic budget build, and that's totally cool. There's like totally no judgment here. This is about you do what you need to do that's right for your needs and your family. But you could have a really basic van, you'll still be camping in pretty much the exact same field as someone who's spent 150, 200 grand. The likelihood is that guy has probably not built it themselves and they've taken it to a conversion company, or they've bought it from a converter or a manufacturer. So when you're approaching your own van project and you're considering what sort of budget you need for your van build, this video is going to be really useful for you, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to break everything down into their component parts and then group them together. So for example, interior, electrics, exterior, all that kind of stuff. I'll break it down to those component parts, and then I'll break it down further into the actual components. So again, with all of this, it's one of those things where you can spend as much as you want on certain aspects and whatever that is important to you. For some people, that might be having an amazing set of wheels. For others, it might be having a big fridge. Everyone's needs are going to be obviously very different. What I'll try and do is I'll give you a bit of backstory behind each of the components and the reason we went down that route, and then you can use that to kind of give yourself a steer in terms of what you might want to do with your build and what kind of budget you might need to work with. And at the very end, I'll then cover off the total build cost to date, and then hopefully this video is useful. If it is useful, or you've got any specific questions about how you'd approach certain things, feel free to leave a comment in below and I'll do my best to answer. If you are new to this channel, please give us a like, please subscribe to this channel. I've got lots more content coming very soon, all about our build, van tours, the electrical system, some of the mistakes that I've made. So all of those videos I'm looking to produce very soon. Plus, there is some very exciting updates that are coming soon, that collaboration with some companies, which I'm very excited to share with you guys. And if you haven't already, please follow us on Instagram, Adventure Van Family. You can find us under that tag. Loads more content there as well. What I'm also going to do is, when I mention specific components, I'll mention where I purchased them from and if there's any relevant discount codes that you can make use of, so you can also save some money through the build. I found it really useful when I was doing my build, reaching out to some of these companies or looking on the forums and trying to find out who's got discount codes, who's doing the best deals. Sometimes time of year can also help. For example, Black Friday is coming up very soon, and some companies will be doing discounts on even things like sound deadening, insulation, your batteries. Last year, when we bought our lithium battery, Fogstar were doing 25% discount on Black Friday, which is a huge saving on the cost of the battery. And it meant that instead of going for a 300 amp hour battery, I ended up upping that to a 460 amp hour battery for effectively the same cost, which is a lot more capacity in terms of battery size. Anyway, let's get into the detail. So the first thing to note here is we built our van all ourselves on our driveway. The only bits that we used for suppliers was for spray painting the pods. Everything else was done ourselves, so I've tried to capture all that as well. We wanted to build a fully off-grid adventure van for a family of 4. We've got 2 young kids, 7 and 3-year-old, so we knew that it had to be fairly utilitarian, robust. Basically the kids are going to be swinging off the kitchen units and everything, so we wanted it to be really strong. We didn't want to go crazy in terms of all the equipment, and also conscious of weight. It's a medium wheelbase van. We couldn't go any longer because we just didn't have the space on our drive. And we also wanted to have fixed beds, so no pop top, no faffing around with rib beds and all that kind of stuff. So we really were kind of leaning towards doing some sort of double bunk system, which is what we've done. And if you check out our van tour video, you can see a clip of that layout. I'm going to do a more detailed van tour video very soon. So in a nutshell, we wanted to be fully off-grid, fully gasless, super easy, really comfy and cozy for the kids, and as minimal faff as possible. So swiveling seats and pulling out awnings and all that stuff, we're just not interested. So the base van, it's a 2020 Crafter. We picked it up second hand. It's front wheel drive. It's the 2 litre 140 Trendline with business pack, 6-speed AC, all those things. It is in white, obviously the most common colour. And the main thing I went for this van is that it had full service history. It had only done 49,000 miles. It was just coming to the end of its 3-year warranty, which meant that I could then go on to the all-in-one extended warranty, which extends it for another 2 years. And then after that, I can extend again for another 2 years. Anyway, we picked it up for 24,500 from a trader up in London. The only negatives is that there is a little bit of damage on some of the body work. But the way I looked at it, as I managed to get him down a bit of price. In fact, the 24.5 is the reduced price. It was originally, I think it was 25.5. Managed to get him down because of that damage, knowing that at some point I could get it into a body shop and get it repaired. It's all superficial. So, and that's a really key point. So whatever van you build, it's really worthwhile making sure that you're investing in a really solid base van. People assess this with different levels of risk, right? And in our first build, our transporter, we bought that from a builder. It had very minimal service history. We never had any major problems with it, but I did have to replace quite a few parts, things like EGR and drive shafts and bits and pieces of that. But you were never really unsure about the true history of the van, and there was a few bits of rust that I had to sort out. With this, we wanted to make sure that we had a really solid base van that had full service history. Hopefully, touch wood, that's what we've got. Bearing in mind it's been a year since we bought it, pretty much on the dot, we've had no issues with it. And the only issues we've had with it are issues that I've caused by changing lights and triggering error codes. So that's the first thing. That's the base van. The next thing is then the kind of the first fix, if you like. So cleaning it down, putting the sound deadening in, your insulation, your thermoliner, floor insulation, and all those kind of bits. So obviously it's a bigger van, so you're going to need more material. In total, I spent around about £510 on sound deadening, thermoliner, insulation, and then a further £80 on floor insulation. And that is some super liner that I put down on the floor and then relayed the timber floor back on top. That's a cost saving that I made with the floor. You can buy pre-made floors to go in these vans, and the likes of Evo Motion do an insulated floor, but I wanted to minimize the height loss as much as possible. And actually, I was very kindly gifted by a friend who'd taken out his old floor from his medium wheelbase Crafter, which was actually a 4x4. He gave me the floor, and that went straight into my van. It had never been used, so it went straight down. I reused the lashing points to hold it all down in place, bit of Sikaflex here and there, just to bond it down to the floor. So the other thing, I didn't want any screws or nails going down into the floor and through the floor pan. So there we've got a layer of insulation, then the wooden floor. There's no need to do any more than that when it comes to the floor insulation. The main thing is making sure you've got a good minimum of 10mm insulation on the walls, over your sound deadening, and then your wool insulation, which you can pick up from B&Q. So all in, on the installation, it was around about £590. But you're also going to need some high temp spray adhesive for putting the wool in and making sure it bonds to the wool. You're going to need a lot of this. So, and it's sometimes 7-8 quid a tin. So I know you can buy the gas canisters and then use a spray nozzle. Depends what your setup is. But I spent around about 70-80 quid just on tins of spray adhesive, and that also includes your floor and all the tiles or vinyl or whatever it is you're using. The floor vinyl, we use the commercial grade stuff basically in tiles, and you lay it down as if it's like LTV. So that was £145. And then carpeting, fabric, scrim foam, all of that kind of stuff, that was around £350, and that was with boy ribbon. And ceiling ply was around £50. I didn't actually spend that much on ply for the wall, like the 5mm stuff, mainly because I managed to reuse all of the ply boards that were already in the van, pulled them off. They were absolutely mint. So basically just cut them out, cut holes to the windows or shape them however I want to, and reused those ply sheets to go straight back in the van, which is again is another massive cost saving. So all in, that kind of first fix, insulation, flooring, extra timber, the vinyls, the carpeting, the fabrics that I used on the walls, the vinyl that I used in the ceiling, and extra ply, all in I spent £1,250. Next up was the seating and kind of bed arrangement. So seats were a priority for us because we use the van as a daily driver. It does the school run. We only have another car. I work separately and my wife does the school run, and so we always needed 2 cars. So one of the first jobs was making sure we've got rear seats to put the kids in. So there was a few months where the kids were being transported around in the back of this massive van just on these seats and nothing else around them, which they found hilarious. Again, you've got multiple options here, and it depends what you're going to be doing with your layout. For us, because we wanted to go down the route of having fixed beds, and we didn't want to have the expense of doing a rib bed, which is big, expensive and cumbersome, we went down the route of buying another double seat from another crafter, which I picked up on Facebook Marketplace, I think for, it was £220, so second hand, and that seems to be about the average going rate for another double seat. And it was good condition. That then went in the back, but because of the height difference in the floor on a front wheel drive crafter, so the floor in the rear is slightly lower than it is in the cab, it's about 10 centimetres. We had to then raise it up on a fabricated seat frame, which you can pre-buy from Explore Campers, and that was £149. That basically drills into the floor through the wooden floor, which I cut out a recess in the plyboard, bolted it through, put some big steel spreader plates and nylock nuts, sprayed it all up, undersealed it, etc. So that's all in there and secure. The only thing you have to do with the double seat is modify it to then add a second seat belt, which there are guides online. I'll see if I can link to one in the description box below, but you essentially got to drill a little hole, feed the cassette in for a second seat belt, which I picked up off eBay for I think 20 quid, and then feed the seatbelt over the top. Does the job, works well, kids are fine. That's the rear seats, which all in cost around 387. We then wanted to, in order to make the front seats more accessible when it comes to camping and turning them around to make a dining area, we wanted to add in swivel seats. So there's only one company that does a swivel seat for the crafter, the new crafter, and that is R&J, and their passenger swivel seat for the double seat is £700, and then the driver's single swivel seat is £190. There are other swivel seats out there except for the double, so if you wanted to go captain seats, for example, you'd have to factor in the cost of buying the captain seat, adding a seat base, and then two single swivels, as well as modifying the handbrake to drop it and allow the seat to swivel. So there's some other factors to consider there. And then in terms of things like the bed frame, so we bought the IKEA, I think it's Skjorva beams. We had to buy 6 beams, so 3 for the lower bed, 3 for the upper bed. They were £30 each. and then a bit of ply for the bed boards, which we then cut out loads of circles to make it lightweight, and that was, I think I used 12mm ply, and then a mattress also from IKEA, double mattress, and 2 kids mattresses, which was, they were about 130, well the kids mattresses were 65 each, and then the double mattress was 150. It is a 4-inch mattress, and we are looking to add in like a 1-inch mattress topper on top, just to make it a little bit more comfy, or maybe upgrade the mattress at some point in the future. But all in, so the seats, the rear seats, the swivel bases for both the front seats, the modifications to the seat belt, the bed boards, the bed frame, the mattresses, all in was £1,737. You see how this starts racking up pretty quick. So now we're moving on to some of the other accessories that go inside of the van. So one of the things we wanted was a really big fridge. So we went for the Alpicool 90-litre fridge, £580, which was a bit of a bargain. The fresh water, the mixer tap. We've since added in a water level sensor. Sink, we've gone for a portable double induction hob from Outdoor Revelation. So that was £100. Water filter, pump, water pipes, an accumulator, and a waste tank. We've just got a 20-litre waste tank directly under the sink. So really simple setup, and our water tank is a 60-litre tank which we've kept inboard. So it's actually it's mounted underneath the kid's bed, and so it's a really simple plumbing from the water tank into the water filter, into the accumulator, up into the taps through via a splitter and using John Guest pipes. The reason for that is because we wanted something inboard. I didn't want to have external tanks or anything underslung, mainly because we're going to be using the van all year round and in the winter and going to some pretty cold places, hopefully this winter, and I just didn't want to faff around with freezing pipes. I may at some point underslung the tank, but 60 litres is more than enough for us and our needs, given we haven't got a shower. It's literally for washing up and washing hands and that kind of stuff. The diesel heater, we went for an Autoterm 4 kilowatt diesel heater from Aiden at Urban Arc Overland. That ended up costing £550, including the comfort controller, and I also went for the extended loom for the controller, which gives you I want to say 5 or 6 feet. I can't remember exactly, but that's definitely a worthwhile investment. So all in, all of those accessories, so that's basically water, cooking and heating, was another 1,500 quid, and that kind of gives us the raw components for being able to use the van as a camper van, except for what's next. Let's talk about exterior. So on the exterior, we wanted the van to be rugged, wanted it to look solid, and we also tried to make it look a bit different. This is obviously going to be very challenging given we're starting with a white van and everyone else seems to have a white van. But first things are wheels and tyres. So we've got the Navis Galida 80s with the BFG Trail Terrain tyres, 4 of them from VW T5 Upgrades was £16.50. The pods that I mentioned earlier, they're from Evo Motion. We didn't go for the window ones, we just wanted to keep them simple, and also because our beds are a bit higher, I figured basically the windows would be obscured by pillows and bedding anyways, there's no point in having windows. They were £571. Glass windows either side, sliding door and on the main side was from Trade Glass, that was £329. Custom blinds from Wonderbug, £365, so they're thermal blinds for those 2 main windows, plus one for our Max fan at the back, of which on that we've got a Max Air Fan Deluxe at the back, and we've got a Max Air skylight at the front, so big skylight above the dining area, as well as the adapter rings that help you mount those skylights and the Max fan into the top of the van and just helps create a nice watertight seal. Roof rack, so in fact, no, let's quickly cover off what we've spent so far. That would take us to £3,691. Then on top of that, we've, in terms of a roof rack to mounting our solar, this is where I saved a lot of money. You could spend thousands on a roof rack. I spent 90 quid on uni strut, sprayed it black, bolted it in using stainless bolts, and then built cross beams to then mount our solar panels onto. It does the job. The plan was to then use that uni strut to then fabricate some brackets to mount an awning. In the end, I went down the Vamoose route because I just got so fed up with trying to figure out how to fabricate brackets, and I'm not a welder. But yeah, roof rack, wind deflectors, the reversing camera from Empirical or in-car install, absolute must. Ours didn't come with one, was another £329. We got some door organisers, so that's not really exterior, but we then got a rear rack from Williams, and we did some, we wrapped the rear windows to make the rear panels to make them look like windows on the back. So all in, that was, oh no, sorry, there's more. Wheel arch covers, it's another £100. Headlights, the Transporter HQ LED headlights, absolute must, 600. Laser lamps, okay, these are, I think, 600-ish quid. I did get them heavily discounted as we were collaborating with a company who shared them with us. It was Venture 4x4 Group. So I'm not going to reveal the cost that I paid for that, but they are about £600. And then the little sequential indicators also from Transport HQ, they were 50 quid. The awning, so we went for a 2-late Omister and a Vamoose rail. That was, again, I got that at a different price, but normally it would be around about £1,000 for that. So all in, our exterior components has cost us just shy of £7,000, which is a lot. I mean, almost £2,000 of that is wheels and tyres. And then on top of that, 700 quid for a rear rack, 1,400 quid on headlights and laser lamps. So yeah, quite a bit of it is lights and wheels and tyres and stuff you don't actually need to make it into a camper van. So then we move on to the heart of the campervan build, and that is the electrical system. And this by far is the area where we spent most of our budget in kind of one hit, because you're buying all of the components all in one go. But it's also a really necessary part, and it's the part that I probably obsessed about more than any other stage of the van. And that's mainly because we just wanted to make sure it was right, it was safe, it did everything that we needed to do, and I didn't have to worry about things going wrong in the future. So I've already mentioned that we made some savings by using Black Friday discount on the battery. We've got a 460 amp hour lithium battery from Fogstar. It's the Drift Pro, and in the end that cost us 1,200 quid. Like I said, that was a Black Friday discount. Not sure if they're going to be doing it again. We've got two 175 watt Victron solar panels. We then have a Victron non-isolated battery charger. Being candid, if I was going to be doing this build again, I would save that money, and instead of going for the 30 amp version or the 30 amp DC charger, I would go for the 50 amp Orion XS. At the time when I was ordering this kit, that component wasn't available on the market. It was being talked about, but it was unsure as to kind of when it was going to be released. It was going to be at some point in 2024. And as it came, by the time we finished the build, or shortly after, I think it was April time, those products came to market. It is something that I am looking to upgrade to in the future, and it's probably the one thing in the build, as I say, that could probably do with improving, mainly because the 50 amp Orion XS is way more efficient, and because it produces more watts or more amps, it charges basically in a third of the time that it does on the 30 amp version. So that's a massive difference when you're driving over long distance and you're trying to do a fairly decent charge. So definitely worth the money in my opinion, and is something that I'll be doing in the future. In terms of solar controller, again, this is all Victron stuff. We went for the 130, and then we got a smart shunt with the little control panel. We then went for a Victron Multi Plus 2. It's the 2000 VA inverter and charger. That was the second kind of biggest component as part of the build, and that was £856. But that is your charger if you're on shore power, and your inverter to be able to control things like your kettle and your induction hob. So it's a really key component. It's heavy and it's big, but it's a really key component. We then used a modified linked power in to use as our bus bar distribution point for all of our main cables on the system, ties everything together. And then we use a digital multi-control GX to control the inverter and the charger literally by flicking a switch. Again, I didn't want, as much as it would be nice to put a servo in with the screen, that's all extra money and cost and things that frankly my wife would not understand how to use. She understands how to flick a switch and turn the charger on that powers the hob. That's all she needs to know and worry about. Everything else, I can geek about the stats using my phone and all through the app and control it all through there. Then you got things like mega fuse, a battery protect, 2 Blue C 12-way fuse boxes, isolation switches, circuit breaker, mains consumer unit, soda disconnect with an inbound protection, 240-volt inlet on the outside, all the cables. In fact, this is now the third probably most expensive bit, was just the cables. I think I spent shy of 400 quid just on the cables to be able to put everything together. Do not underestimate how much you will need to spend on cabling just to make sure that everything works together safely. You don't want to be undersizing your cables, otherwise you will be setting fire to your van pretty quickly. And then on the final thing, some nice blue trunking to make it all nice. So all in, the electrical system came in at £3,690, which is a fair chunk of the total build cost, but 100% in my opinion worth it, because we have not had any issues with it. And we've done Europe twice. We're away at least once every month and we've had no issues whatsoever. The battery is pretty much permanently topped up. The lowest we've ever got is 60%. That's cooking meals on the induction hob, no problem, and it's been brilliant. And I don't have to worry about gas, I don't have to worry about wind blowing out the flame, I don't have to worry about the heat, safety in the van, and it just makes everything so much easier. And it also means that we can take our portable hob, take it out the van, put it on our table and still cook outside. Amazing. That gives you kind of the primary component parts of the van. Now obviously there are things on top of that, such as plyboard, paint, hinges, tools, LED lights, USB switches, accessories, things like bedding and all that kind of stuff. So, and all of that essentially comes to somewhere around £1,000, £1,500. So let's call it £1,500 in terms of the total cost for all of those components, which means all in the total cost of the build for our adventure van build. And whilst we did certain things on a budget, we invested in other areas to make sure that we had a really solid base. All in, we've spent just shy of around £17,000 on our build, and that's fully DIY, as I say, except for the pods which we got sprayed. And I forgot to mention, I paid a friend to help me do some carpentry on the kitchen units and the cabinetry. That was the final sprint to get the van functional for a camp out in Easter. To some, that might seem like a lot of money. To others, that might seem really cheap, and you may even be thinking, wow, you got a lot for that money. Like I said, there are areas where we have saved a fair bit in terms of some of the materials. We didn't go for the most expensive ply, then had to paint it, but ultimately we built the van for our needs and our purposes and wanted to keep within what we felt was a reasonable budget. You could easily spend more than that just on a base panel van. You know, if you went for a different colour or four-wheel drive, you could be spending 50-60k before you've even started on the build. And then if you're going to go to a conversion company, you're going to be, I would say, starting at 20-25, and then it kind of just goes north from there. So I don't know if this video has been useful. I really hope it has. If you are thinking about taking on a van build project for yourself, particularly a large van like a medium wheelbase crafter, this will give you some sort of indication on what a reasonable budget might look like and some of the components, and ultimately where you may decide to invest more or less than in certain areas. There is also a factor where there will be certain jobs where you may not feel as competent to tackle by yourself, and that is totally cool, and that is where it is worth spending the money and getting a professional to do that job. I cannot emphasize enough things like electrical systems and and cutting holes in your van are non-return kind of jobs, as in once you've done it, you've done it, and if it goes wrong, there could be some significant consequences. So it's absolutely worth getting either expert advice or paying a professional to help or do the work for you. I forgot to mention on the electrics, I had a lot of help from Chris at Bespoke Solar. He was really helpful in advising on the system and helping organise the components that I needed for the build, as well as the local company that supplied all the cables. Again, they were helpful in making sure that I had the right cable rating for the lengths that I was running and the components that I was connecting. But ultimately, use that information, communicate and talk to people who are in these industries, in these businesses, because they will know what the safest thing to do is. As I say, if you've got any questions about the build or your build, or your budget requirements, feel free to drop me a comment below and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you for watching. Please like, please subscribe. I've got loads more videos coming very soon and some really exciting updates on the van, which I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one. Ciao.